Welcome back to my channel for February's Human Design Transit Report. I'm Maggie Ostara, if you haven't met me before, and I'm delighted that you're here. We're going to dive into the mandalas for this month and for all of the different gates, and we're going to look at where the outer planets are as well as where the sun and the earth are going to be. And we've got some really interesting things in store, so let's go ahead and dive in. One of the things I love about doing these monthly reports as opposed to the weekly reports that I was doing before is that we get to get a bigger picture about what's going on over the course of a month. And as we go through the months of the year, we'll also get to look at what's different this month versus the month before. And you'll get to see kind of how the sun and the earth move through the human design mandala over the course of the year. I always like to start with a picture of the mandala because a lot of times people haven't seen this and they don't really know where the human design system comes from. But the mandala is basically how your chart is created and how all of these different charts are. You can think of it as kind of it's a mandala, it's a pattern, if you will. It's a map, if you will, that is kind of laid down around the earth, and the neutrino stream, which is what we call it in human design, which is basically cosmic energy coming from the planets, is coming down through the mandala, right? And from that, we get definition in a chart. Just take a look at this mandala briefly. I love to show it because we get to see where the astrological signs move around the course of the year. Inside of that are the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching. Inside of that are the 64 gates, which relate to those 64 gates of the I Ching. You don't see it in this one, but normally if you're actually running it for a date, you'll see the planetary symbols inside those different pie marks. And that's how we get definition. So let's go ahead and take a look at what's happening in February. Okay, so these are the sun gates in February. We start with the gate 13 and we move through these 5 different gates over the course of the month. And you can see that they are moving counterclockwise. And we are in Aquarius and we'll move into Pisces during the course of this month. Then on the opposite side of the mandala are where the earth gates. So the earth gates are all the way on the other side. They're literally across from where the sun gates are. And we're going to start out with the gate 7 and then we're going to move through those following gates. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Then take a look at, this is where all the February sun and earth gates are. So here again, you can see that on the one side, we've got the sun gates. On the other side, we've got the earth gates. So you can really start to get this sense of how these two planets move around the human design mandala, lighting up these different gates with their energy. I just wanted to show you where the outer planets are during this month. They're a little bit all over the place, but you can see they're on the left-hand side of the mandala, which is actually mostly on the right-hand side of the body. So just to give a little perspective here on the outer planets, because the outer planets are the ones that stay in gates for a long time, much longer than the sun and the earth, which are changing every 5 to 6 days. And because of that, they have a long-term effect on us. They're affecting everybody. They're often called generational influences because they do last for a long time. So for example, Pluto's in the gate 60. Pluto is going to be in the gate 60 for 3 years, which means that there's a whole group of people born during those 3 years, right, that are going to be influenced by Pluto being in the gate 60. And I have talked about this quite a bit in other transit reports, so you can go and find out what I have to say about that. Now I just want to make a more general comment. One thing to note is that all the planets are direct right now. Every year we have this period starting in the early spring and going through about May, January to about May, where all of the outer planets are going direct. And then we start going into retrograde season, where all of the outer planets go retrograde one by one until in the fall, late summer, fall, we've got all the planets, outer planets are going retrograde. So It's a different way of experiencing the energies that we recognize, certainly here in the northern hemisphere, as being springtime. Everything's kind of moving forward, right? And then by the time we get to the fall, things are slowing down and we're starting to feel like we don't have as much energy as we had in that springtime. So it's something to take advantage of while all the planets, outer planets, are moving direct. You might just feel a little bit like you have, that proverbial wind under your wings. And Neptune's going to be in the gate 36. Again, Neptune's been in the gate 36 for a long time. Uranus is in the gate 23. Saturn is in the gate 37, and Jupiter is going to move on February 4th, I believe it is, from the gate 27, where he's been, to the gate 24. Jupiter moves faster than all of the other planets, and these are in order of the length of their orbit, so they go slowly. But the thing I want to point out here is that every single one of these planets is in a circuit that is not logical. So we've got the knowing circuit showing up twice, we've got the tribal circuit showing up twice, and the sensing circuit showing up once. So we're going to see this theme carried forward through where the sun and the earth gates are. We just have 2 gates in the logic circuit that are being lit up, only 2, the 4 and the 13. So we'll look at that a little bit later. But out of all of the gates that are lit up, we only have 2 in the logic circuit. So what that means is that all of our relationships, our creativity, and our intuition are really what's being highlighted more than our left brain, logical, analytical mind energy. This is an interesting phenomenon for you to just kind of take in as a big picture comment, to say, wow, my intuition and my creativity is really getting activated, and also my relationships. And as we go through, you'll see in more detail what that's about. Here are the sun and the earth gates, and I just lit them up here on this particular body graph so that you could see them. I'm not going to go through what all of these are because we're going to talk about that more later, but you can see that we're really looking at gates that are over here on the left-hand side of the body, right? And in particular, the emotional solar plexus is all lit up. So these are all of the different gates that the sun is going to be lighting up during this month. So we have the 37, the 49, the 55, and the 30. And those themes are here as the catalyst and principles, which is the 49, desire and passion, which is the gate 30, spirit and faith, which is the gate 55, and friendship peace, which is the gate 37. So the first name here is traditional human design, and the second is quantum human design. So every year around this time, the sun moves through these gates of the emotional solar plexus. And as I mentioned a minute ago, the gate 36 is also lit up right now by Neptune, right? Has been lit up, will continue to be lit up. So we've got a lot of emphasis happening here. So one thing to be aware of for yourself is just to pay attention if you feel more emotional than you usually do, especially if your emotional solar plexus is not colored in on your chart, if you're not emotionally defined, because then you're probably going to feel these energies a bit more. It'll depend on which gates are lit up in your chart and by what planet and all of that. But still, just know that this is an emotional time. And so you want to give yourself extra time to make big decisions. You want to give other people extra time to make big decisions. And you also just want to be really working to raise your vibrational frequency so that the emotional energy that you have is going to be more creative rather than more about feeling states, if that makes sense, right? Because the power of the emotional solar plexus, it's one of the 4 motors in the chart. It's the second most powerful motor in the chart. Emotional energy is very strong, and we want to be able to build it and harness it and direct it where we will, and not feel like we're at the mercy of it, which is what happens when we haven't taken the time to kind of learn about our emotions and our emotional energy. So this is going to be a great month for you to be tuning into that and learning and discovering more about your emotional energy and about the emotional energy of the people around you. Because remember, everybody's going to be feeling this as we cycle through these gates of the emotional solar plexus. So let's talk about the emotional solar plexus here for a minute, because In the lore of human design, the solar plexus chakra, right, which is below the rib cage, is kind of high in the belly. It's actually where the stomach is, was split into two the end of the 18th century. And they split into the spleen center, which is on the right-hand side of the body, and the emotional solar plexus, which is on the left-hand side of the body. There's actually two centers here. And as we look at these, we can think about, well, okay, so the solar plexus is a place of great power in the body, just as lower in the body, the sacral center, and the second chakra. But great place of power. Actually, all those energies down lower in the body are powerful. And so we want to take a look at this and go, okay, if this is a site of great power, the solar plexus, and it's emotional energy, that's what human design is naming it, then we want to be able to take that and utilize it as a creative force in our lives. Now, the challenge here sometimes is that if we're still identifying more with fear and survival, which is what the spleen is about, in its more awakened and evolved state, the spleen is highly intuitive, but it's often experienced as a place of instinct and instinctual fear. And so when we split these two energies apart, right, into the spleen and the emotional solar plexus, then we start to get a more nuanced understanding about emotional energy and to realize we're evolving out of this instinctual, fear-based way of creating. And now we're stepping into a more elevated and more awakened and more evolved way of creating, which is to get a handle on emotional energy, raise its frequency so we can direct it where we want it to. And this is definitely the potential that we have during the course of this month of February as the emotional solar plexus is lit up. So as we go through the specific transits, it's good for you to be paying attention to, okay, so what gates of these do I already have lit up in my chart, which are white and therefore undefined, that I'll start to feel more when the sun and the earth are transiting them. And how can I use this really to my advantage when I can understand the power of emotional energy, not just reject it, which a lot of us have been taught to do, right? We reject it, we suppress it. Of course, it doesn't go away. It can just create a lot of discomfort in the energy body and the physical body, and an emotional energy field. But we want to be able to feel our feelings and feel our emotional energy and learn how to build our emotional power so that we can use it to create and to manifest in our lives. So let's go ahead and dive into the specific transits for the month of February. Now, the transit that we're in right now, I covered in last month's transit report, so you can go and watch that if you want to find out what's happening on February 1st, February 2nd, because the first new transit in February starts on Saturday, February 3rd, as the Sun moves into the gate 13 and the Earth moves into the gate 7. Now, both of these gates are on the G center and both of them are collective circuitry. So let's go ahead and dive in. So the Sun is lighting up the gate 13, which is known as the listener in traditional human design, or narrative in quantum human design. And as I said, it's on the G center, and this one is in the sensing circuit. So sensing circuit is right-brained energy. It's creative, it's experiential, it's embodied, and it has a strong storytelling element. 3 of the gates in the sensing circuit are storytelling gates, and that's all the storytelling gates in the chart. So the 13, when I talk to people who have this lit up in their natal chart, I will sometimes say to them, do people like to tell you their stories, or do people like to come and confess to you sometimes? And a lot of times they're like, yeah, they do. It's like, yeah, that people want to come and tell you the thing that they're longing to tell somebody, but they've never told anybody else. So this is that kind of energy. And you may be finding that people want to tell you their stories. You may find that you want to tell other people your story, and it could be something that's really quite personal. even though this is collective circuitry, telling our inner stories, right? And because it's on the G center. So because it's on the G center, this is the center for love and lovability, identity, and direction. So the stories that come from the 13 oftentimes are, really close to the heart, right? Because they come from that G center. They're close to the heart. They have to do with how we understand who we are. And so there can be some vulnerability around these stories. There can be this sense of being exposed on occasion, which is why somebody might feel like they want to confess to you and they don't want to tell everybody, but they do want to tell somebody. So notice if that's what kind of arises for you during this transit, or if other people are coming to you with this. And one of the most empowering things you can do with the energy of this gate is to consider, what stories am I telling about myself? Or how are other people telling you stories about themselves? And is that story beneficial to you, right? Or is an upgrade called for, right? Would you benefit from an upgrade? Because sometimes the stories that we've told about ourselves are actually really detrimental, right? If we continue to tell stories, for example, about how we're not good enough, or we're not worthy, or, we're not smart enough, or not pretty enough, or whatever the things is that we took in as young people, and we keep living inside that story. And sometimes we have experiences in our lives that seem to show that it's true, right? But as we mature and as we gain perspective, we can look back at these stories we've been living inside of and go, well, is that really serving me, right? Is it true that I'm not worthy? Or is it true that I wasn't smart enough? Or actually was this other person just, projecting some of their energy and some of their issues onto me? Maybe that teacher that told me something at some point in my life was having a bad day. Or maybe they were activated about something else that had nothing to do with me. So this is an opportunity also to take another look at those stories from the past and upgrade them so that they're more useful for you. Narrative is a wonderful way for us to kind of process and recreate stories that we've been living inside of so that they're more useful for us as today. So then the sun is going to be resting on the gate 7. The gate 7 is also on the G center, but it's in the logic circuit. And so it is left brain energy. It's more analytical. It's more strategic. It's more focused. And it's very beneficial. There's nothing wrong with logical energy. It's just that we tend to learn in our culture that it is the only way of really knowing things or knowing what's actually true, which is a very limited understanding and not actually accurate. So we want to be able to use our left brain energy. We just want to be able to use it in balance with all of the other energies. And so you may feel during this transit a little bit of tension between the sun and the gate 13, which is right brain energy, and then the earth in the gate 7, which is left brain energy. Now, ideally, what you're going to do is you're going to draw on the strengths of both, and you're going to ask them to really connect with each other and honor each other. Because of that conditioning around left brain dominance, sometimes the left brain stuff can kind of beat up on and want to reject the right brain stuff as if it were not as important or as if it were not as true or not as reliable. So you just kind of want to watch out for that, since we do have those two different types of energies lit up during this transit. So the 7 is known as like the chief of staff. That was the way I first learned it in traditional human design, or collaboration in quantum human design. And I love it being called collaboration because it's all about how are we evolving leadership. Its mate is the 31, which is known as the leader or democracy. And so this is the leadership of the collective circuitry that's being expressed here through what in traditional human design is known as the channel of the alpha. And we're really evolving that into more of a collaborative, democratic way of operating, where we want to make sure that our collaborations are mutually beneficial. This is so important that in my book on feminine sovereignty, a pillar number 7 is mutually beneficial collaborations, because this is what we're evolving into as you know, Pluto is moving into Aquarius, and we are moving into the time of community. And a big part of our ability to really be in community in ways that work for everyone is our ability to work together and to collaborate and to not be just looking at what is in it for me, but what is good for the collective. And of course, this is collective energy. So if we think about this, we can be looking at, what are the mutually beneficial ways that we can operate in life, and how can that provide us with a way of grounding ourselves during this transit, so that as we tell stories about ourselves or we hear stories from other people about themselves, we're looking for how can that really be mutually beneficial, specifically for that person to begin with, but really for everyone, because we're here during a time when it's important for us to be revising our stories so that they are more meaningful for the present. And this is key for our ability to really work with each other, because we need to be breaking down these stories of isolation, of separation, that I have to compete with you, and that is the way that the world goes, right? But it's actually not the case. So you're going to have the opportunity during this first transit to be looking at, how can I understand my own story? How can I understand the stories of others in a way that makes it easier and more beneficial for us to work together? Then on Thursday, February 8th, the sun is going to move into the gate 49 and the earth is going to move into the gate 4. So the gate 4 is the other gate that we have that is in the logic circuit. So we have the 13, now we have the 4. Those are the only two gates that are being lit up pretty much at all, certainly by the sun and the earth and the outer planets. And the 49 is the first of a series of gates that are being lit up by the emotional solar plexus. So let's go ahead and dive into the 49. So the 49 is a beautiful emotional energy, and it's known as principles in traditional human design, or the catalyst in quantum human design. It's also known as the gate of revolution. So it is about relationship and partnership in particular. So this energy is kind of known as having very high principles and can be a little rigid behind those principles regarding relationships. So this is kind of known as either, somebody does something that you perceive as violating something that's important to you in your relationship, violating your principles. Okay. You can just walk away from a relationship because of that. The other side of it is that you could submerge your commitment to your principles, and you could stay in a relationship longer than is really good for you, either because you don't think that you could have a better relationship, or you don't think this relationship could get better, or you're just kind of used to it being a certain way and it may not be great, but you've got a relationship, right? So those are different ways that you can be experiencing this kind of energy. The reason it's been renamed catalyst in quantum human design is that it can be a catalyst for change and upgrading your relationship. So rather than either just walking away from it or subordinating yourself in it, or blowing it up in a variety of ways, is you can be a catalyst for it. And this is where revolution comes from, right? It's this idea that acting on your principles, acting on what matters to you, you can help to upgrade and catalyze a change in a relationship to make it better. To make it more in alignment with what really matters to you. And it is its mate is the 19, which is a highly sensitive gate. It's about attunement. It's about our ability to attune ourselves to the highest frequency, the emotional frequency that will be beneficial for intimacy, because this whole channel is really about intimacy. So as the sun is lighting up this 49, the question you can ask yourself is, What am I seeing and feeling in my relationships? Is it working for me? Is it not working for me? Is it working for the other person or persons, or not working for them? How can we revolutionize and upgrade? How can we create a catalyst for our relationships so that it does become really beneficial for us and for the other person? So that, again, we've got this theme of kind of mutual benefit, right? Mutual benefit. So how do we do that? And so that's what you might be feeling. You want to watch out for the potential for things to kind of blow up, because that can happen when the sun's in the 49, because it can be a disruptive energy. After all, the catalyst can be disruptive. But if you are forewarned and you know what's happening, then you can really get on top of this and be conscious and purposeful about how you utilize this energy. And the Earth is lighting up the gate 4, which is at the beginning of the logic circuit. It's right up here in the left brain, and its mate is the 64, which is either doubt or curiosity, and this one is answers or possibilities. So we've got a theme here between the more traditional human design names, which tend to be a little bit more either the shadow or the disempowered aspect of the energy. And with the 4, it's definitely that way. So if we're going from doubt and demanding answers, right, which is kind of the constricted way of experiencing this beginning of this left brain energy, if we can go into curiosity and possibility, you can feel how much more expansive that is. It's much more, many things can happen. Let's see what's possible, right? Let's not try to nail down answers too quickly. Let's open up the space that allow for possibility to come in. It's much more open and allowing for things that you don't already know to come in, and to give space for the mystery, right, of the creative intelligence of the universe to come in and provide some possibilities that if you're just demanding answers, you might not be open to. So you're going to want to ground yourself in this sense of expansive possibility, ideally, rather than constricting yourself into demanding answers. And that is going to enable you to catalyze your relationships in a different way. If you go into a relationship challenge doubtful and demanding answers, it's not likely to come out all that well. Whereas if you go into a relationship challenge with curiosity and looking for possibilities, many new things become available. So that's really what is on offer for you here during this transit. One thing to be aware of also is that 49 is emotional energy, right? It's not logical, it's not rational, reasonable, or strategic, any of those things, right? So you want to also look to see if that logic energy of the gate 4 starts to kind of beat up on the emotional energy of the 49. You want to make space for both of them. They both are beneficial. They're both helpful to us. We don't want to get so emotional that we lose ourselves and don't have any sense of rationality, but we also don't want to become so rational that we suppress and reject our emotions. This is the full range of human experience, and we want all of it, right? So open up the space so that you can have all of your faculties available. Then on February 14th, the sun is going to move into the gate 30 and the earth is going to move into the gate 29. I always love this one because here with the sun moving into the gate 30, this is the gate of desire or the gate of passion. And of course, it's Valentine's Day, right? And it's on the emotional solar plexus, so it's emotional energy. And it's in the sensing circuit, so it is right-brained energy. It's creative, it's experiential, it's embodied. And when we see this lit up in a chart, like a natal chart, we say, oh, this is going to increase the intensity of the whole chart by 10 because it's in the I Ching, the gate 30 is known as clinging fire. It's like this ability to hold on to something that you have imagined. Its mate is the gate 41, which is the gate of imagination, which is the gate that begins the human design new year. And so now we've moved from all of that imagining that we were doing a few weeks ago, and now we're going to supercharge it with this passion, with this desire, with this clinging fire that gives us the energy we need to be able to hold on to the power of what it is that we are imagining for ourselves. This is just such an important transit, such an important energy for us, because as we are not seeing here in the march of the sun and the earth through the mandala, we're not seeing a logical progression. What we're seeing is gates that are far more about our creativity, right? And our passion and our imagination and our embodiment lit up. And so that's really different than if we're trying to just logically, analytically, strategically figure things out. And so this is giving supercharged energy to our imaginations and our passions. And so here on Valentine's Day, one of the ways you can think about this is, how can I really fall in love with my own passion, with my own desire, with what it is that I have been creating for myself with my powerful imagination, which of course is a highly evolved form of intuition, right? Is our imagination. How can I be giving my energy to that? How can I feel the fire that's growing inside of me regarding my passions? And then that kind of fireball, if you will, of the sun is resting on the gate of perseverance, or the gate of devotion, the gate 29, which is on the sacral center, but it's also in the sensing circuit. So we're getting a lot of energy through this sensing circuit. And the question to ask yourself here is, what are you devoting yourself to? Are you devoting yourself to your passion, to what you're imagining, to that which you desire, to the new possibilities and potentials that have become available to you? Are you devoting yourself to that? Or are you devoting yourself to believing that, you can't do things, or the world won't support you, or other people are not here to be in a good relationship with you, or you can't have, the resources that you need to do the things that you want and need to do in life, right? Is that what you're devoted to? Feeling like there's not enough for you, or you can't engage with what you want or what you imagine or what you feel is possible? Or are you devoting yourself to this sense of, yes, my passion matters, my desire matters, my purpose, right, really matters? Because this is a potent fire, that gate 30, for you to be juicing up your sense of why I'm here on the planet. Like, what is that about for me? And really tuning into the quality of the emotional energy that you have around this. Now, the 29 being on the sacral has got this powerful life force energy behind it. But the emotional quality that you have around these two energies is what's going to determine the frequency of that 29, right? And what you're actually going to bring into your life. So this is a very potent transit, and you want to really grab a hold of it so that you're utilizing that emotional energy and directing it to the devotion of what it is that you want, and not towards what it is you don't want, but you may be, just kind of persevering with that because it's a habit, right? Because it's a habit. So this is a great time while this earth is in the 29 to build a new habit for yourself. Really consciously choose what you're devoting to you're giving all of your life force energy to. What are you devoting yourself to? Is it in alignment with your heart's true desire? Is it in alignment with your passion? And if it's not, make a change, make a change, because you can always make a change. Then on Monday, February 19th, the sun is going to move into the gate 55 and the earth is going to move into the gate 59. So again, we have two gates on the emotional solar plexus. So the gate 55 is on the emotional solar plexus and the gate 59 is on the sacral center. So coming off of the previous transit, we've got the same two centers highlighted by these particular gates. So the sun moving into the gate 55, this is the gate of spirit in traditional human design, or the gate of faith in quantum human design. It is on the emotional solar plexus, and it's in the knowing circuit. So the knowing circuit is individual circuitry. It's here to be different. It's here to bring change. It's where the evolutionary impulse of humanity runs through the human design chart. And the gate 55 is a vital part of our understanding of what we're moving into, of our evolution. Because the 55 is about knowing that we'll have what we need when we need to have it. So it is a sense of abundance, and not an abundance of accumulation, of having more and more and more. It's not that kind of abundance. It's the abundance of understanding that we live in a benevolent universe and that we are provided for, and that when we are in right relationship with ourselves, with other people, and with the living world, then we always have what we need when we need to have it. And this requires a lot of faith, because our culture does not teach us that. Our culture generally teaches us that we don't have enough, that there isn't enough, that we have to scramble for things. It's based in scarcity. The Western culture really grew out of a notion of scarcity and also excess, because they're kind of two sides of the same coin, right? Which is where we get the development of empire and colonialism, which basically the process of that was to say, we're going to go into the lands of an indigenous people, and we're going to extract from the people and from the land what you can, leaving those people without enough, but then moving that excess over to a nation state. So Rome was the people who perfected this, right? All roads lead to Rome, and all the money went to Rome from whatever indigenous culture they went and colonized. And so this is a basis that we're still living with 2,000 plus years later, where this legacy of empire has taught us that, if we're not careful, we're going to be the people taken from. We're going to be the people extracted from. And we're not going to be the people who are going to be able to have more than we need, right? And this is where our unhealthy desire for wealth comes from, hoarding comes from. So the 55 really stands opposed to that, if you will. It says, no, we don't have to live that way. And in fact, people who live close to the land, which is what being indigenous means, is being connected to the land, understand that we are provided for and that we have what we need when we need it. Now, does that mean that we sometimes don't have lean years? No, of course, we can still have lean years. But it does understand that we are in this right relationship with the living world. So this is an awesome time for you to be looking at what's your relationship to this kind of sense of not enoughness, right? This mantra of scarcity, which you can see just like happening all over in media and in culture. What's your relationship to that? And can you find a way to shift that to a deeper sense of, I have what I need when I need to have it, so that you're moving into this present moment and not projecting yourself out into the future where you're afraid that you don't have enough, right? I think if you were to take where you are now and you're like, oh no, but 6 months from now, I won't have what I need. People do this with like retirement all the time. Like, I'm not going to have what I need when I'm like 80. I'm like, yeah, and you're 40. Like, why are you stressing out about that now? It doesn't mean that you can't save her for retirement, or if you can't be smart around money. But if you go into fear around that, you're not using your creative energy. You're letting that splenic energy come up, okay? And you want to watch out for that. So the 55 is saying, hey, be in the present moment. Take a look around right now. Do you have what you need here in this moment? And is it possible that you have what you need when you need to have it? I know for me personally, this kind of mantra has gotten me through some really difficult times where I did go into a state of fear. I have, gates, a number of gates on the spleen lit up in my chart, and I can go into the fear of the future, and then I'm like, okay, wait, dial back. Okay, what does the gate 55 have to say? The 55 is you have what you need when you need it. And so if we can move into a state of gratitude for what we've already received, we can start to feel that abundance, and we can start to unravel the conditioning that we have from the overculture that there isn't enough and that we have to compete with others, and that we, if we don't do that, we're going to end up, like a bag lady. I mean, people have told me that, like, I'm going to end up on the street, being a bag lady with a shopping cart, right? Like, these images roll around in our minds. And I'm not saying there aren't people who live that way, because there are. But do you want to give your energy to that particular story? I don't think so, right? So then, interestingly enough, the Earth is lighting up the gate 59, which is on the sacral center, so it's primary life force energy. And in traditional human design, it's called sexuality, and in quantum human design, it's sustainability. So it is part of the defense circuit, which is a sub-circuit of the tribal circuit. So it's about our relationships. And it is the part of the defense circuit that is about providing for. And it is part of the channel of love and war, or the channel of mating, which are traditional human design names for this channel. And it's been renamed sustainability, which is about how are we utilizing our powerful life force energy, right, in ways that are sustainable. Of course, sexual energy is one component of life force energy, but it's not the only aspect, right? Life force energy, prana, chi, it's what gives us the ability to engage with life, right? So it's a very important primary energy. And so when we think about the sun lighting up the 55, which says, hey, we have what we need when we need to have it, the 59 is saying, yeah, let's look at how we're living, and sustainably, in the sense that we're not overdoing. You might even want to move into a sense of regeneration, which is how do we not just be able to keep doing what we're doing, but how do we actually heal and regenerate? Because this is what we need to do with our planet, and this is often what we need to do with our bodies. And sometimes what we need to do with our relationships too is just sustaining a relationship that isn't working that great. Don't you want to regenerate it and make it to be a relationship that does work great? So you might just think about that a little bit for yourself, because a lot of us are moving into really looking at regenerative strategies, regenerative culture, regenerative agriculture, and moving over beyond sustainability. And that understand then that we have what we need when we need to have it is a core component of that, right? But looking at how are we using our life force energy, and how are we using the life force energy of the living world, right? As the planet's dominant species, how are we using that precious life force? And are there ways that we need to regenerate our relationships so that we can have a better relationship with that living world, as well as with the people in our lives, our family members, our beloveds, our close people in, because the defense circuit is kind of about that close-in community. But I would also suggest that it's more than the close-in community of human beings, it's also the close-in community of all of the living beings that aren't in the immediate ecosystem of where you live. So that might be something that you want to explore for yourself during this transit. Then on Sunday, February 25th, we move into our final transit for the month of February, as the sun moves into the gate 37 and the earth moves into the gate 40. And this is always an interesting transit. It's one of the few transits during the course of the year where the sun and the earth light up a channel. So the 40 is on the will center and the 37 is on the emotional solar plexus, and they do create a whole channel, which is known as the channel of the bargain in traditional human design, or the channel of administration in quantum human design. And this is where contracts live, agreements live, both conscious contracts and agreements, like the ones that are written down and we sign, and ones that are maybe not, it could be verbal ones, but also ones that maybe are not spoken out loud. And this is a good place to look at for yourself if you find in your relationships, because this is tribal circuitry, so it has to do with our relationships, but it is in the commerce or business part of the tribal circuit. And so it does have to do with exchange and our, how we are, it could be in business, like literally in a marketplace. But like, for example, recently I sat down with my kid who's 22 and who lives with me, is going to college. And we talked about our agreements for our household. And, what are each of us doing? What's our timing? Who's doing what when? And it was great. It was really good. It just gave us a whole new way of understanding what we're doing. We shifted some things around to make them more current with how we are, each of us is. And so you might want to look at that for yourself too during this transit is, are your agreements working for you, right? Or do you have agreements that you think you've agreed to one thing and somebody else thinks you've agreed to something else, right? And so it's an opportunity for you to bring this up to the surface where you can have a conversation about it so that you can get on the same page with people. Because I have found it pretty consistently, people who have this transit lit up in their chart is that they can have unconscious agreements. Many times we grow up in families with unconscious agreements. It's like nobody ever sat down and said, okay, this is how things work in our family, but you got it anyway, right? Like you were never supposed to say something that made that person angry because if you did, it was bad for everybody, right? That's an unconscious agreement where everybody's just tiptoes around that person who can blow up, right? That's an unconscious agreement. It can be protective for the people who are not the rageaholic, not the best of agreement, but that's an example. And so as on our evolutionary path, right? Because that's what we're doing here in human design, right? We're on our evolutionary path. We want to make things as explicit as possible so that we know what we're actually dealing with and we know what we're actually agreeing to. And so our purpose in this way is to become more and more conscious and to become more and more aware so that we have choice and we can make conscious choices. So let's take a look at the sun in the gate 37. So the gate 37 is on the emotional solar plexus. You'll see both of the centers are lit up here because of that channel, right? And so it's emotional energy. In traditional human design, it's known as friendship. And in quantum human design, it's known as peace. And so it's a beautiful frequency. It's a frequency of how can we all get along with each other, right? That's what friendship is about, right? How do we relate to each other so that we're supportive of each other, we receive support from each other, we understand, we seek to empathize, we seek to be on the same page, right? Which is what I was just talking about the agreements, right? And it's prioritizing this sense that we are all in this together and we're going to have contracts and agreements that are mutually beneficial. So we're going to go back to that collaboration that we had with the Gate 7 earlier on in the month, right? We're going to go back to that. How do we create agreements, collaborations, ways of being together, ways of working together, right? Ways of doing business together, ways of being in a household together or in a community together. If you start looking at what your community agreements are, right? Or your municipal, your city agreements, all of that kind of thing. How do we do that? Based in a sense of we're all in this together, right? And we want to do this so that it's mutually beneficial and so that it creates peace for all of us, that we can be at peace as we are working with each other, we're engaging with each other. And how can we do that? So it's this beautiful energy that is just, the sun is lighting this up and it's really, and it's saying to us, this is possible. This is possible. We can do this. We can grow ourselves so that we can be in the world together in ways that are, that are mutually beneficial and are supporting everyone. Now, a key component of this, if we move to where the earth is in the gate 40, and the gate 40 is on the will center. So it is a powerful energy because the will center is also a motor. But remember, the will center works to rest, right? So it's a little bit of an on-off energy, right? So we don't want to use willpower long term, right? Willpower is really meant for short bursts, right? It's like, oh gosh, this thing has to be done now, and I don't necessarily have all the energy I need for it, but I'm going to go for it, right? And so you kind of pull up that willpower and you say, I'm going to do it, right? But you don't want to live that way. I've lived that way for a long time. It leads to burnout. No, don't do that. What you want to do is know how to work when you've got the energy and then rest when you need to. So the gate 40 is really lighting that up. So in traditional human design, it's known as loneliness, and in quantum human design, it's known as restoration. You know, the people that I know who have this as part of, it could be where their sun is or just have it lit up in their chart. Sometimes they relate to this loneliness. So if you feel kind of alone, even when you're with groups, it could be, you know, if you have the gate 40, that is one way of experiencing it. But a lot of times it's more about being alone, like wanting alone time, which is where that restoration comes in, right? Because if you've been engaging in commerce, you've been engaging in agreements, you've been working with other people, and you've been doing all that, sometimes you might need to withdraw from the community and to be alone and to restore, right? Because again, work to rest. And then of course the emotional solar plexus also has a wave, right? Those of you who are emotionally defined know this, right? So it's not always going to have the same amount of energy. So when we're looking at this relationship between the emotional solar plexus on the one hand and the will center, neither one of these has long-term sustainable energy the way that the sacral does. But what they do have is they do have energy that fluctuates, that comes and goes. And it's important to be tuning into, do I have the energy or not? And the 40 can help us with that. The 40 can be like, hey, you know what? You've really put out a lot. You need to go and get some rest. Like just take it easy, go get some rest for a while, and then come back in when you feel like you have sufficiently restored. Of course, if we just go back to what we were talking about in the previous transit about sustainability, right? Is it sustainable? Because willpower is not sustainable, right? And if we're just trying to, push without willpower, it's not sustainable. It leads to burnout. So we want to live lives where we restore on a regular basis, or regenerative in terms of regenerating our own energy, regenerating our world, regenerating our relationships. But we also, and that, restoration is part of regenerating, right? It's part of that cycle of where, we as people, but also the living world needs to restore at times. Like right now, here in the Northern Hemisphere, we're in winter. A lot of the living world is restoring. It's dormant. It's taking a deep winter rest at this time. And so you may be needing that as well. Like just take a look. I mean, even though we're here at the end of February and in the Celtic tradition, we're already in spring, but it's like, take a look. Are you restoring sufficiently? And if not, do so before we kind of burst forth into the springtime and the most expansive period of time in the Northern Hemisphere, because you don't want to start the spring and that really expansive time that goes from the spring equinox to the summer solstice and carries through the next few months after that. You don't want to go into that depleted, right? You want to be restored. So that's a really good kind of check for yourself. So just to kind of summarize this month, we have been walking through the gates of the emotional solar plexus. So we want to be especially tuned to our own emotional frequency, the emotional frequency of other people. It's possible that you might get more activated or more triggered during this time. It's possible that other people will feel more activated or more triggered during this time, particularly if they're identifying more with the more disempowered or the shadow aspects of these gates, right? So you want to just really be paying attention to that for yourself. You want to paying attention to it for other people and really see what you can do to live with kindness. As one friend of mine says, she goes, have mercy. It's like, we're in a really intense year. All of the predictions that I've seen for 2024 is this is just going to be a really intense year. So whether that's solar flares or whether it's Pluto moving into Aquarius or whether it's the presidential election that's happening here in the United States that's already kind of going off the rails, whatever it is, just know that it's important for you to be elevating your energy. This is one of the reasons that I offer the Kundalini yoga practices that I do inside of the Becoming Sovereign membership site that I have, the Quantum Retreat Center, because this is a way for us to be restoring and building and clearing our emotional energy so that we can be in a higher frequency. If you enjoy my human design transit reports, I have a really great tool that we've developed to help you be able to search over 150 different transit reports that I've created over the last 3 years that go in depth about all 64 gates of the human design system. I started to realize that there was a huge amount of knowledge that I was imparting through these transit reports, but it was hard to get at because I released them by date, not by gate. So if you want to find out more about the gates, it's kind of hard to just look for it inside of the transit reports. So what's really cool is this search engine that we found enables you to search by gate. And when I did a search for the gate 33, just randomly picked that one, it came up with over 11 different videos that I talked about the gate 33 in, and there were multiple examples inside of each one of those videos. This is a lot of information, far more than you're going to get in any book, and you would really get outside of any professional level training program. And even then, these are probably more practical because when I do the transit reports, I'm really looking at how does this show up in our lives? Like, how is this going to influence us and influence the people around us? So if this interests you, the link is down below in the description and you can go and check it out. You can register for it by the month or by the quarter or by the year. So you go to the registration page, it'll say every month or every 3 months or every year. And that basically means that you're buying access for that amount of time. And of course, if you buy it for a month and you want, ongoing access, you can always, upgrade to another level if you choose to. And if you're a human design professional, this can be just a treasure trove for you as you are, studying for doing your readings and your courses and so on. So I highly encourage that you check it out. All right. Well, that's our energy report for the month. Come on over and join us in the Becoming Sovereign Quantum Retreat Center. And I look forward to meeting you then. All right. Many blessings. Much love. Bye for now.